It is Tuesday, April 2nd. I've been joined by the Honorable Councilmember Mitch Linder. And we do have a few items today. I want to welcome you all to City Hall. Council, we do have about 5 items. 2 I think we could dispense of rather quickly if you agree. The first one would be a consent item. There are no cards on that item. We can move that to consent with your approval. Okay. On item 3, we can continue to Plum for April 16th. And in council, hopefully on April 24th. And with a second, we can make that movement. Okay, so that'll be the action of this committee. Let's move to the director's report. And we do not have our director here, but we have an able person who is going to introduce herself and let us know what is the status report relative to ongoing developments in the planning department.
Thank you, Councilmember Lisa Weber, Deputy Director with the City Planning Department. Good afternoon. Just a quick update for you. Last week, you may have heard that the Hollywood Millennium Project went before the City Planning Commission for that hearing. It was a 9-hour hearing that ultimately resulted in a 5-0 approval of the project. For those who don't know, the project is located adjacent to the Capitol Records Building, near the intersection of Hollywood and Vine. It would allow for over 1.1 million square feet of new development comprised of residential uses, office uses, hotel, and a sports recreation facility. So that will be moving forward.
Only 9 hours?
Only 9 hours.
Okay. And what's the height of that particular structure?
There are a variety of development scenarios that are proposed. The highest would go to 550 feet. Okay. And it would generally be comprised of 2 residential towers that would extend to that height.
Interesting.
But the project also includes a number of street-level amenities, really activating the space, really celebrating the music history surrounding the Capitol Records building.
Great.
The second item is just a reminder that we will be bringing to Plum shortly an update regarding the multiple approvals ordinance. If you remember, that has been now in effect just about a full year, and we've had great success with it. It has really proved to be very valuable and saving about 6,000 units from being expired, among a number of other benefits as well. So we're going to be preparing a report and bringing that back to you for your review. And that concludes my update. Thank you.
Well, thank you for that report. Any questions, Councilmember? Okay. All right. Well, that takes care of 3 out of the 5 items. Roberto, can we go to item number 2?
Yes, council members. Item 2 is an appeal by Leslie Dion Emge. She's appealing the advisory agency's approval of a track map, a vesting track map for a 7-lot subdivision in CD 13.
Okay. Please introduce yourself.
Good afternoon, council members. Jim Tokunaga at the City Planning Department. I'm the Deputy Advisory Agency. What you have is an appeal of the Advisory Agency's approval of a 7-lot single-family subdivision. The subdivision is designed in accordance with the small lot provisions of the code. An appeal was filed by an aggrieved party. The appeal is based on the subdivision not being, the density of the subdivision and the overall scale of the project not being in conformance with the surrounding neighborhood. The advisory agency feels that the project is in conformance with the general plan and the zoning code. The site is zoned RD 1.5. It allows the 7 lots or 7 units, however the project is proposed. Although the adjacent properties may be developed with 1-story, smaller single-family homes, the overall character of the neighborhood is changing. It's just north of Sunset Boulevard, sort of adjacent to Legion Park and on the outskirts of the Dodger Stadium area. There is like a surface parking lot next door, and there are multiple family apartment buildings in the area. We felt that with the need for infill housing, and actually we're finding a lot of these small lot projects coming into these older neighborhoods where there are some infill lots, and we're finding the vast majority of our cases are coming into these neighborhoods. And it's unfortunate, though, for people who have lived in a neighborhood for many years, decades actually, and when they see a new subdivision coming in, of course they're surprised, or at least not too happy with what happens. But we feel that this is a good project for the area, and so we therefore recommended denial of the appeal.
In certain instances, some of these lots have had their entitlement to build more for years, but were never triggered or activated. And once they are, when people become aware that lots do actually have those entitlements.
Yes, we found those situations because many of the maps, due to the state granting extensions on the maps, they last for up to 12 years. This is a new project. It's a new case, but again, it's a situation where the zoning allows it, and the area may have been dormant for many years. But again, we're finding a situation where it's currently occupied by some vacant bungalow-style homes, which are being demolished for this project, and so they see it as a change.
How long was the hearing on this case?
I was not the advisory agency hearing on this, but there were several speakers in opposition.
Okay. I don't have any cards on this item.
Okay.
But I do want to ask for the appellant, for the record, to make sure the appellant is here. Okay, great. So can we get her name on the record here?
Yes, sir, Councilman. Her name is Leslie Dion. I'm sorry about the last name. MG? Oh, MG, sorry.
Only because I did not see a card.
I did not get it.
No problem.
There was no.
Can you fill one out after you're done, for the record?
I think there's another person that would like to.
You have two persons?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, my name is Leslie Dion, MG. I live at 1406 Quintero Street. I have lived in Echo Park for over 30 years and in my residence for over 20, and I'm one of the 5 residential one-story residences that surround this site. The majority of the people that live in the neighborhood are opposed to this development because of its height and its density. Infill development is happening, but we believe that it should be harmonious and not negatively impact the livability of the existing homes. We've been trying to, we think that there is a way to kind of work around this. Nobody wants to see an empty lot with abandoned buildings. We would welcome livable homes, but not homes that ruin the privacy, the light, and the proximity of this very large structure. We have been working with the developer. They have made at least one very important concession, which was to remove rooftop projections from what was in effect the 4th story of this building that they want. And although we have not been able to get renderings of how it appears on all sides, specifically to the south and to the west, which is where the majority of the most affected homes are, it appears that at least part of the parking structure is subterranean or partially subterranean, and it seems like a reasonable compromise that could make everybody happy would be to dig it down 10 feet deeper, and rather than 3 lower and 3 upper units, 4 lower and 3 upper units, have 3 lower units and 3 upper units, and make the 3 on the bottom a little bit bigger. This would give them the same return on their investment, and it would also reduce the negative impact on the surrounding homes. The reason that I filed the appeal is we'd like to have a little more time to continue this discussion, and I filed the appeal solely to try to garner at least 30 days so that there's no rush on this. There's no urgency to this development. This particular developer has 4 other projects. It has one of 10 units about 500 yards away. So there's really no urgency that I can see to this at all, and we would like a little bit more time without the unnecessary constraints to see if we can come to some kind of a compromise where everybody can be happy with what they have.
You sound very confident when you say there's no urgency. Is that based on your conversation with the developer?
No, I didn't discuss the urgency of their project with
Okay.
them. We heard from the zoning administrator's office that they do want to get started as quickly as possible. It just seems that with 37 units of their own in the works and dozens and dozens within a 2-mile radius, I don't see what really could be lost by giving the existing residents a little more time to see if we can come to a consensus on this.
Okay. Well, thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
And please fill out a card so that we can have that for the record.
Where shall I get one?
Excuse me, before you leave, ma'am, before you leave, do we have a question from the councilman?
Hi, thanks for coming to this. And yeah, from what you stated, it seems pretty reasonable, depending on what, of course, the applicant says to that. But my question was with the surrounding community, have you reached out to the neighborhood council, and have they taken a position on this as well?
We have, well, our neighborhood council was, recently underwent some turmoil with the leadership, and they're focusing their efforts, I believe, on trying to restructure their operation and get going. The main focus of the GPANC, which is our neighborhood council, is, as far as development goes, almost exclusively focused on the Barlow Hospital property, which again is, 700 yards away from this. So this is in very close proximity to that. So it does, they do influence each other, but that is their
But
specific.
have they taken this particular matter up? Did they take a position
No,
on
they
this
have
at all?
not. No, well, no. It's a little confusing. Apparently, because there are these two projects, one across the street from the other, there has been, it appears, it's hard to tell, some overlapping regarding representations that were made or promises that were extracted or accommodations that were going to be made. And now at this point, it's hard to tell if they were talking about this project that I'm talking about or the accompanying one that's across the street. It's kind of unclear at this point. And Ari Bessendorf, who is the new head of the GPANC, is, I think, just currently trying to straighten things out there yet. So they have not taken a position on this appeal in this particular matter, only on the general development in the past, as it was presented before. So.
Okay, thank you.
One last question. In reviewing the file and looking at the data, I saw a map where it shows apartment structures across the street.
Correct.
And how high are those apartments?
I'm sorry?
How tall, how high are they?
There is, well, because it's a hillside, the garage is subterranean, so it's in effect a two-story with the garages underneath. There's also a chalet-style duplex, which is on the elevated side of the street. And in fact, as I discussed with the applicant, the project of theirs that is on the corner is in no way comparable to this one because it has a 3-story apartment building on one side, this elevated two-story chalet on the second side, the streets on the third and fourth side. So a tall project such as this actually fits quite neatly into that space. This particular project, however, has, as was noted, a parking lot on one side and then is surrounded by one-story homes. So it really does project very tall and, looms over, for lack of a better word, for the surrounding structures. So yes, there are 2-story structures in the neighborhood. None of them are close to this.
Okay. I appreciate that.
Anybody else?
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Okay. We also have Jennifer L. Churko or Coker. Yes, ma'am. Are you in appealing the decision?
No, I represent the applicant and owner of the property.
Okay. Okay, please.
I actually did provide each of your office to your land use deputies in each of your office packages in preparation for today's meeting. I have copies of those as well if you need a copy. It looks like you might have them. Can I?
Please.
So if I may, I just want to bring you up to speed. We submitted this project this time actually last year. We presented to Neighborhood Council a number of times. In fact, in your packets there I have 4 agendas that illustrate that we were on the agenda, we were heard, and there was a consent calendar and motion to approve. We have letters of support from both Neighborhood Council, the Improvement Association of Echo Park, the Historical Society, and Councilman Garcetti's office. Those are all part of the planning case file as well as provided to you here. All of those organizations also testified at the December 12th hearing at which Mr. Tokunaga was a part of as it relates to our ZA case and our track map. So we have reached out to the community in numerous ways well above and beyond what's required of us. Again, Neighborhood Improvement Association, Historical Society, to ensure that the existing structures there have no historical significance. We've even agreed to provide some of the structures, doors and windows and fixtures of the existing properties to be made available to the neighborhood should people want to remodel free of charge. We've gone door to door. We've been working on this for some time. Again, Councilman Garcetti's office has been well aware, both Oliver and Marcel are well aware of all of our dealings throughout. So just want to also address, as it relates to the appellant's assertion that the project is incompatible with the permitted use. Contrary to statements made by the appellant, this project is not out of character. Again, as Mr. Tokunaga expressed, all projects, including her own residence, are part of the RD 1.5, which entitles any property owner to build up to 36 feet high. That is for myself. Anyone to the south or north or east or west of us is entitled to do that. You'll see in your package in Exhibit D that the both properties, including hers and ours, are in this zone, and that the neighborhood is dominated by multifamily housing. And so, in fact, our project does not deviate from the allowed use. There is a single-family home to the south of us and to the west, but is multifamily, duplex and whatnot all around. And then you'll see there in Exhibit G, there is a vast array of different architectural styles. They really run the gamut from Craftsman, Spanish, and modern, and everything in between. I just want to remind you as well that we have determinations for the zoning and planning that say that the project's location, size, height, operations, and other significant features will be compatible with and will not adversely affect or further degrade adjacent properties, the surrounding neighborhood, or public health, welfare, and safety. It also goes on to say that we're in conformance with the general plan and existing zoning code. So, again, I ask that you consider all these items as well as the evidence that we've done all that we can to reach out to the community and deny the appeal.
When a statement was made that they wanted more time to discuss with you, how do you react to that request?
Well, I have diligently been involved in this case for the last 12 months. So more time, it's interesting. Prior to the December 12th hearing, I gave permission of the planning staff to give anyone who wanted to talk about the project my personal contact information to talk, and that is including Miss MG. For 4 months leading up to the hearing and to today's date, I had reached out to her numerous times offering to hold a site tour for her and any residents. For well over 4 months, she did not think it was important or did not respond or said no, she wasn't interested at this time. It wasn't until 2 weeks ago that she finally agreed to meet with me, which of course I did. We met, we went over the project, we've exchanged subsequent emails. I've provided proof there in your package of all those email exchanges, including additional information. And so to ask for more time when it's been 4 months since we've had a hearing alone is, she clearly doesn't sit on my side of the project.
When we look at the nature of the building in its appearance, is there a rendering that may demonstrate what you're thinking of? In terms
Yeah, I
of
actually have boards here with me. If you'd like, I'd be happy to
just
share them with
the
you.
one real quick. Let me
Yeah,
just see
you
what.
got it. Now, there was some mention, again, after feedback from Neighborhood Council. And the residents, we heard two things primarily. We heard that on-street parking is limited, in part because of the proximity to Dodger Stadium. People like to park on the street. So as a result, we've reoriented the site. We offer private trash enclosures and private trash service so that there aren't additional cans on the street taking up limited on-street parking. Additionally, we heard, even though we were in compliance with our height limit, we heard that anything that you could do to reduce the overall height would be appreciated, and we did that. So we previously had a rooftop projection, and I'll show it to you here in a minute. And we reduced that, which actually reduced the overall height by 7 feet. So above grade, you're looking at on the upper portion of the slope, you're looking at two stories above grade, and then on the lower portion, you're looking at roughly 3 stories above grade. So let me.
So you have a before and after.
Which is where the stairwell came up onto the rooftop. So we've reoriented and shifted the floor plan so that the stairwell is on the edge of the house so that we can eliminate that additional vestibule that existed prior.
By shaving off that footage and height, is it more compatible with existing structures?
Well, again, we reduced it by over 7 feet.
No, I understand.
Yes.
That's why I'm asking the question.
Yes. There's an apartment complex that's just across Douglas to our east. It's 2 stories plus, and it's not really accurate to say that they're subterranean, because subterranean means fully subterranean. They're on a slope and they're semi-subterranean, so it's roughly 3 stories, and there's an apartment above us that's 2 stories. There are 2- and 3-story duplexes, condos, apartments all around us.
Okay. One last question. On the submittal where you identify all the multifamily structures surrounding the project site?
That was provided by myself.
Right.
Right.
Does that also mean that they support the project, or they're just identifying the nature?
No, the purpose of that was just to illustrate that as it relates to
The nature of the structure.
the complaint that we are not compatible with the community, it's to illustrate that we in fact are. Its vast majority is multifamily.
Okay. Councilman, any questions?
Reviewing all of, I didn't get the package. My planning deputy didn't get the package that.
I had emailed it to your land use deputies in your office directly. No problem. That's why I brought extras.
So I'm reading it through now. Did you guys ever meet on site?
We
Neighbors?
actually met at what I had suggested when we emailed back and forth was that the day that we chose to meet, which was March the 20th, it was 2 Wednesdays ago, that we meet at Masa down on Sunset, that I brief her at a cafe on the project, and that we could go to the site afterwards. Upon finishing the discussion, she said that she didn't feel that a site visit was warranted, so we did not. But I did offer numerous times.
I'm going through the record here, and it indicates that you had suggested an on-site meeting with any of the neighbors at any time. This goes back to November.
Correct.
And then again in December. And then again in January.
Correct.
And then there seems to be a lull in the action, and it jumps to March. And nobody took you up on those on-site meetings? for those
Correct.
emails?
I continually
I
followed
mean, I see the
up.
responses as
Right.
well.
Saying, I haven't heard from you again. I want to extend the offer.
I
Even
see
once
that.
the appeal was filed for you and any Quintero and Douglas Street residents, I'm happy to host. And either it was, I'm busy, or we're not interested at this time. And then 2 weeks ago, there was a sudden interest, and we met, and we
And
communicated
You had
something.
indicated earlier that the council office, CD13, was well aware of the project.
Yes, in fact, they
they taken a
testified.
position?
They testified in support of the project at the December 12th hearing, and there's letters of support from them in our file,
In here?
in our case file. That's just a package provided by
For the
me.
emails. Got it.
So in our case file, we have EPIA, Neighborhood Council, and Garcetti. There was an issue as street widening on this project and
Yeah, I
a
saw
project down the street.
The emails as well, or the letters, I'm sorry, from, I was going to ask you about that, the neighborhood association. Find it. Nothing's tabbed, so excuse me for a second. There were two different letters with three different suggestions. Oh, here, from the Echo Park Improvement Association.
Correct.
One, asking for centralized trash service as opposed
Right,
to individual.
which we are providing, and we reconfigured the site to allow for that.
The second one was to preserve several mature trees, including a Morton Bay fig at the corner of Douglas and Montana.
Right, which subsequently it's not a Morton Bay fig, but irregardless, it's a ficus. The issue is we wanted to preserve the street trees. At the December 12th hearing, BOE insisted that we widen Douglas 3 feet and Montana 5.5 feet. We made it clear to the residents that by doing so, that would remove the street trees, and we asked for their support. Garcetti's office supports not widening. EPA supports not widening. Neighborhood Council, and so on.
Yeah, I've got letters from the neighborhood
But-
council, the association, that suggest they would rather
Right.
the improvements not be done.
Right, as you know, we have no control over that.
Right.
If BOE directs us to do that, then that's what we have to do. So that was part of our conditions of approval,
Is that-
at least as it relates, to moving forward with tree removal permits. If I get a conditions of approval that say you're going to do a widening and impacts these, I put forth a tree removal, because that's what's required. It has since gotten to the level that, Ron Lorenzen and residents' tree was actually supposed to be removed on the 11th of March. Residents were very unhappy. We are as well. Called us. I talked to Ron Lorenzen at Urban Forestry. I re-expressed to him it is not our intent to remove them, but with the widening, that's what the result is. It's being pushed to a hearing with Public Works and BOE in another month. And they'll work it out, but we certainly would ask for your support.
Well, you got my support. I mean, you've got the council office support, the neighborhood council support, the resident support. They want to keep the trees there. Even I think the people who are filing appeals want to keep the trees there. Oftentimes we run into the situation where just because of requirements in streets that they come in and say, well, we've got to widen the street at some point. And we get these jut-outs or streets that don't make sense because they just want to take the opportunity or the chance during that specific land use case where they can say, okay, that's the only time we can ever do it, so we're going to do it anyway, but it doesn't always make sense.
Right.
We run into that all the time. So I see all the attempts that you've made, and I applaud you on that for reaching out and obviously knowing that the community folks are very busy as well. To take time out of your own busy lives to try to deal with appealing a land use case, and that's why I certainly looked at neighborhood councils as well. That was my first question. Did you meet with them? And clearly you did. And they show their letters of what their conditions are. And so I would support this only because of that, and that you've done that extensive outreach. But without the street widening, and I don't know if we have the ability to do that, but I would support this without the street widening to keep, just as an effort to keep the trees that the community so strongly wanted to keep as well. And I think that also creates a buffer in the community.
I mean, currently the way the street is configured, there can be cars parked on the street and there's clearance for enough
Yeah, I see
two
that.
vehicles.
And then my
either
last
direction.
question to you, so I would support it with that if we have that ability. And then my last question to you is, have you considered the ability, and I know it's it's just a matter of money and nothing more, although money drives a project and it will make or break a project. Have you gone back and looked at the idea of going down, you're going subterranean anyway, of looking at that request?
So we're semi-subterranean in
Right.
that because it's hillside, the upper slopes, you approach at the ground level, and the back of the garage and the back of the house is going to be buried into the hillside. And then kind of the reverse condition on the opposite side, because you're at a slope there. So to be fully subterranean, I mean, as you know, is costly. Yeah.
Has it been explored?
Fully subterranean, the entire lower floor. There's also an issue, as you know, with ingress and egress. As it relates to that, you have to provide light wells and a way, obviously, for someone to come out. So going fully subterranean on that first floor doesn't simply resolve the problem. Now we have new problems that we have to address. How are people going to safely get in
But my
and
only
out?
question was, has it been explored, and would it even be feasible to explore?
We have explored it, and it was our opinion that, particularly as it relates to our feedback from building and safety and fire for ingress and egress and all the requirements, we're talking you'd have an 8-foot ladder up a window and out the sides, that it wasn't ideal for any resident.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. Thank you, ma'am. We do have another speaker card, Anne Marie Holman. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Before I start, I'd like to quickly address a couple of things that Ms. Chiro-Coker said, especially about their outreach in the neighborhood, because I live on Elysian Park Drive, which is just around the corner from the development that we're talking about now, and it's actually separated. Only my lot goes through to Montana Street, so I'm only one door down from the development on Montana, and I've been hearing lately that other people in my area are getting letters about a planned excavation on the Montana site, and I haven't heard anything. I know that she said she made outreach efforts over the preceding months. I didn't really know anything about any hearings on this matter until a physical sign was put on the trees that they were thinking about cutting down, and that was only about 2 months ago, maybe a month and a half ago, really. So I would love to be included in the loop, but I'm not getting the memos. To get to my main point, I'm not against new development in this area at all. In fact, I welcome it. I just want to see it fit the neighborhood, and my concern is that I'd like to see hopefully fewer homes, but definitely homes with lower profiles on this piece of property. And I would like to see the trees kept as well, which I think we're all in agreement about. Mr. Tokunaga, who just spoke, was correct that the zoning does allow these kinds of plans to be built in our neighborhood. But the thing is that the proposed buildings don't really conform to the suggested guidelines that the City of Los Angeles has put out for small lot development, which I found on the Housing and Urban Development website. Those guidelines dictate that the size and height of new buildings be compatible with what's already in existence in a neighborhood. And this particular development on Upper Douglas would put 3-story buildings right up against and looming over the adjacent buildings on either side. To the immediate south of there is a 1-story single-family home. Just to the north of this lot is a 2-story apartment building, but it's not tall enough to be able to not lose its city view if these 3-story buildings are put up in front of them. I'm excited to hear about the possibility of subterranean garages for these, and I think that would probably present it would be a big help if that could happen on this particular piece of property. But I have another concern about the small lot ordinance too, because it was meant to drive the development of affordable housing in Los Angeles. I don't know how affordable these units are really going to be compared to what's already available for sale in my neighborhood. The projected prices that I've seen published online for these are equal to or even higher than the prices that are being asked already for single-family homes on full lots in Echo Park. Finally, I'm also concerned about the precedent that opening the door to a development that's as dense as this one and as tall as this one, how is this going to impact the future plans that have been proposed for Barlow Hospital to build their village in Elysian Park? That's something that would have a tremendous impact on Echo Park and on Elysian Heights, where we live now. So I'm concerned about what this might pave the way for, and I realize that is an issue that goes beyond this, and yet it's still something to look ahead to and to consider. Finally, this is a company that is, this development company, Planet Home Living, is based in Newport Beach. They're not from Los Angeles. The money that's being made here is not going to Los Angeles, it's going back out to Orange County. And while I appreciate their interest in Echo Park, I want to make sure that their investment is truly in our neighborhood and that it isn't just in finding the next developing neighborhood that's about to be gentrified, descending upon it, making a quick buck, and then moving on to the next one and leaving the neighbors there to deal with the consequences. So,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you. Can I have the planning staff come on? Ms. Tokunaga?
Yes, Jim Tokunaga, City Planning.
Ms. Tokunaga, when we look at the height that's being addressed, which seems to be the most poignant issue, is the height, in your judgment, given the scale of the other structures, that impactful?
Well, it'll definitely be impactful for the people who live right next to it. I mean, they have a single-story home, and it is an upslope, so they will be able to see it. So to that extent, yes, but for the overall community, that the height does conform with what's out there.
Okay. Okay.
So, yeah, I would, I'm not going to argue with the fact that there is a single family or a single-story home right next door.
All right. Okay. Well, in echoing the councilor's observation, given the consensus that seems to have been built over time with the neighborhood councils and the council office and your recommendation, I'm sorry, man. This is more like a hearing as opposed to a give and take. But I appreciate that. I would move to deny the appeal filed by the appellant. I hope I don't mispronounce it. Leslie Dion? Okay. For the entire decision of the advisory agency and thereby sustain the approval of vesting tenant tract number 71930 located at 1363 North Douglas Street for a maximum of 7 single-family lots as shown in the revised map, stamp dated May 17, 2012, in the Silver Lake Echo Park Village and Valley Committee plan subject to conditions of approval. That'll be the recommendation of this action. The street widening, I think, is a different hearing under, that would be under Public Works.
It is. It's the engineer, but you can recommend that the engineer not do the dedication and not remove the streets if you want to give that
We can make that note
a recommendation.
in our recommendations, that they do not remove existing trees and leave the case of that requirement to widen the street, therefore saving the trees, right? Okay, so that'll be an added recommendation from this committee. Okay, seeing no one else in cards, I hope that'll be the action of this committee. Thank you. All right, let's move to the next item.
The next item, council members, is an appeal by Jesse Marquez on behalf of the Coalition for a Safe Environment, and Skip Baldwin on behalf of the Wilmington Citizens Committee. They're basically appealing the action of the zoning administrator, which granted 2 variances for a truck trailer parking container storage facility in Wilmington. Yes, Council.
Okay, so let's have the presentation from the staff.
Good
Good afternoon, President and committee members. Soo Chung, the City Planning Department. This application is a zone variance application and also zoning administrator's adjustment that is to allow cargo container facility with reduced front yard setback. This, as I mentioned, it has two components in this entitlement. One is variance and one is a zoning administrator's adjustment. I initially approved this application with a lot of condition. My decision was appealed to Harbor Area Planning Commission, but they split their vote by a 2-2 vote, 2 commissioners for the project, 2 commissioners against, so resulting in a fail to act. The zoning administrator adjustment portion is not further appealable after the commission action. So Council District 15 did 245, Section 245, asserted jurisdiction over zoning administrator adjustment portion. So on March 6, last month, Council adopted a motion to deny my grant to allow reduced setback. Now, the issue before you is only for zone variance portion under the transfer of jurisdiction. That is to allow cargo container facility with some waiver of the required improvements for the cargo container facility. This project site has approximately 1.5 acres of lot area. It was previously zoned for industrial and had been used for industrial since 1940s. The current property owner became the owner of this property in 1974. Industrial use had been continued at this location until 2 or 3 years ago, when the last tenant was evicted due to a failure to rent payment. So since the site had been vacant for more than a year, the property owner lost the jurisdiction, the non-conforming right to continue industrial use at this location. Originally, this property was zoned for industrial, but in 1991, during AB 283 process, industrial zone was changed to QRD3 zone. That is to allow in my calculation, a maximum of 17 dwelling units at this location. Since you have my findings that I approved in your transmitter, I will not reiterate my findings, but I'll just highlight just a few points I consider for my decision. This industrial use is not a new use. It was just discontinued for 2 or 3 years. Until then, it was continuously used as industrial use. All zoning properties, including the property across the street, they are zoned to also same zone as QRD3, but they are continuously being used as industrial. And I put a lot of condition, including a 5-year term grant. So my grant was not permanent grant. After 5 years, if this committee and council approves the variance portion, applicant has to reapply to continue that use once that grant expires after 5 years. There are a lot of improvements required on the project that includes landscape on street frontage, the paving the entire site. So that will, in my opinion, instead of letting this parcel, vacant parcel, and have appearance of a blighting effect to the community, I thought just letting this applicant continuously use this property as previously used, I thought that was beneficial also for the community. One more thing I'd like to add, the residents really concerned about the impacts, the truck traffic that really go through residential street. The Eubank Avenue is narrowing down substantially on the north side of the subject location. So there is no motivation for drivers to go through north of Eubank Avenue north of this project site. according to applicant, he had a potential tenant at this location. He presented a 5-year lease with the cargo container operator, which has that use on the northerly adjoining property. They plan to expand their operation to the subject location. I'm not sure that lease is still enforceable. I'm not sure if it's still feasible. That you can ask the applicant. My 5-year term grant coincide with a 5-year term. The lease agreement they presented to me when I consider this application. This committee, if you incline to support this application, you can modify any of those conditions I imposed. You can add more conditions, and you can even make it shorter term grant, shorter than 5 years. And if you incline to deny this application and support the appeal, please make sure you make the required findings, including how zoning administrator erred and or abused its discretion. It will conclude my report, and I'll be available for your question.
Thank you. Can you just, I do have a couple of questions for you. In listening to your analysis, I think you did a really good job on the site, and how it was site-specific to the mitigation of what could impact the area. But I'm very concerned with the makeup of the uses surrounding this site. I noticed on the map that there is a baseball field half a block away, which will be used by kids who are playing on that field. I noticed half a block pockets of residential uses that are of different configurations that are immediately around this site and or a block away, half a block away. So it's clear to me it's a zoning pattern that was not given much thought back when it was evolving, probably back in the turn of the century, if not the 30s and 40s. So today there is a real conflict of uses. So my concerns are the overall health issue when you start compiling the fact that there's high traffic, given the proximity of this location to the port, the drive-through traffic of trucks, the immediate levels of contamination. And so to me that does weigh heavy. I think you did a good job on the site itself, but I think overwhelming issues, and I want to hear from the community how they perceive their quality of life, given the discretion we have as a city to protect the local neighborhood. And to me, that's very critical. So let's continue with the hearing, but I just wanted to ask you, when you were framing your analysis, did you include these outlying issues that have direct impacts to the degree that should have been addressed in retrospect?
I agree with you that the residents in immediate vicinity expressed their concern about detrimental impacts from this immediate industrial uses in this community. This Wilmington Harbor has a really long history of land use conflict between residential and industrial. My consideration was that the Warren property, which is across the street to the west of Eubank Avenue, is an oil drilling site. And also the Army Corps was using the easterly adjoining property as their storage. A little bit east of that is the railroad track. Right, northerly adjoining property is also being used a similar type of cargo container facility. The southerly adjoining property also being used as oil drilling and also similar type of truck parking. Now, those uses are in the same zone, and they are being used as such for a long time. The way I see their operation, they are not going to go anytime soon. So the grant I approved for this application is a 5-year term grant. And also, as you may know, Wilmington Harbor Community Plan, our planning department does not have any immediate plan to process our community plan review anytime soon. So I thought that allows just a 5-year term grant. After 5 years, we can take a look at the land use conflict in larger context. I've seen some of other residentially rezoned properties are also being used industrial, and my heart goes out to the residents in the immediate area. I'm not saying there is no impact. According to this applicant, they will have approximately 8 to 15 trucks per day, just using this location as a staging location, because the port charges them extra fee to come to the port during peak hours. So it was my other consideration, but I agree with you that the residents in this immediate area always have land use conflict and detrimental impacts.
And I appreciate that point of view, but as an elected official, my goal would be, because I see how the children in my district suffer and the families suffer because it's been like that for a long time. And it's time that we change so that the families don't feel that impact. As incremental as it may be, it makes a significant difference. I have high levels of lung ailments in the children that mirror an environment like this in my district. I have high levels of children who are suffering from obesity because they can't play in the playground because of the amount of trucks, fumes coming out of their cars and trucks. So to me, we should be taking the opposite direction. Given what you just said, because it's been like that for a long time, we need to start changing that. And so that would be my humble opinion.
Okay.
But I just want to put that on the record.
Okay.
So we'll move from here and we'll go towards the appellants, and then we'll listen to the applicant. Thank you very much.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Okay, so that being said, let's hear from the appellants. And we have Jesse Marcus and Skip Baldwin on record as the appellants.
Good afternoon, and thank you for this opportunity. I have been a Wilmington resident for over 50 years. We are now 5 generations in Wilmington, and I established our organization about 12 years ago as an environmental justice organization because I wanted to see a brighter future for our children. Going back a few years ago to our prior councilman, Janice Hahn, as soon as she took office, she had made a pledge to us to deal with some of the issues that we were facing in our community. One was that we had been a stepchild towards port expansion, freighting and shipping industry, so that it was always a priority. Even if you were to pull out our Wilmington Harbor City Community Plan right now, the city didn't deliver on over 50% of the things that's in that document. Then we were told a year and a half ago, when we were prepared now, where now there's my generation of adults can now speak and review these documents and plan for our future generations, our community plan update has been put on hold indefinitely. So even when we want to change things, we can't do it. We even got involved with the CRA for over a year to start doing some things through that, and you all know CRA got canceled. So now we're here.
So let's focus on this case.
So now we're here back today because we met with Janice Hahn there in order to deal with the subject of the proliferation of container truck storage yards. In her review with the planning department and all the other policing entities here in LA, they discovered that there were 31 container storage yards. 17 of them were operating illegal. They are near to family residents. You post a notice 500 feet, well, the average city block is 700, 750 feet. So if you want to get residents, you at least got to go across the street 1 block. Now, what I brought and delivered to you here are color photos here. And what I'm showing and illustrating here are the fact that cars are lined up on the sidewalk. When it's time to report for work, they start moving to the center, and they double park, blocking everything in both directions. So that's what you can see looking south.
And how long does this configuration last?
It can last anywhere from, I'd say, a minimum of an hour up to 3 hours. It depends how many ships have come into the Port of LA, so that can change. But this is not just once a day. We're talking about a morning shift, an afternoon shift. So it can, during an 8-hour day, you can swallow up a good 4 to 5 hours. No problem there.
Okay.
On Exhibit B, you see us now looking from the other direction, looking north. You can also see on the left the oil well field.
But help me connect this with the case.
Okay, in dealing with this, we're talking about another container storage yard, which means there would be more truck traffic going in and out of the place, meaning it's going to be passing down this residential street.
So with this parking configuration, it'll be further compounded
But
by
we
the
use
fact
the
you
term,
have trucks going through here.
yes, we use the term cumulative impact. There's already truck traffic there. There are already container storage yards. In fact, in one of the other photos, that says they should not be stacked too high. Well, they are stacked too high. Okay? Just north of them is another business that does some transloading. But it also does hazardous waste storage and transportation and cleanup.
And how close are those impacts given this current application?
This adds to it.
Okay.
This adds
See,
to
what
the
I'm trying to
so
do
what
is
you see-
connect what you're saying to the case before us.
So what we see here is the current situation today. Driving by and doing a site visit is not enough unless you're there the whole 8 hours a day to see everything play out. You'll also see in here too where we're talking about the train, like in Exhibit D. On the left is the train track. So if a resident tries to avoid not wanting to go that way, they get stopped by the port train right there at that location. Trains are averaging 20 minutes or more to go by. There's at least one every hour. Port is growing and expanding. Even with the BNSF SCIG project, that would make it every 10, 15 minutes, trains going by.
That's Exhibit D?
So again, we're trapping residents right there. Then you see on the bottom right where it says Wilmington Industrial Park, we have an industrial park right across the street on Anaheim Street, which is the proper location for this type of business and industry. But then you see cars parked right there because they can't fit just on that one location. When you look at Exhibit E, I can show you one of their neighbors so you can see the containers and the trucks at that yard. And this would be an identical thing at this facility if you were to allow it to go forward. So it shows containers, trucks, campers, and everything there. Then you see on Exhibit F, mobile homes. Workers are parking their mobile homes there overnight to get the different shifts. You can even see the one on the right. He even put a wooden pallet there as his porch step. I mean, they're living there day after day.
How long do they stay there?
Well, if a ship comes in, they could be there 3, 4, 5 days in a row for that. If there's multiple ships, then there's no reason to go away. They just stay there in their mobile home.
I guess they have 72 hours before they have to move.
Well, they will move, go get dinner, come back.
That's what happens. I'm hearing you're describing what happens in other parts of the city because of the situation. Go ahead.
So then you see in the bottom picture, you'll see at least 3 camper trucks there. So we have mobile homes and camper trucks besides everything else. And what we're saying is that
Are they parked in front of residential homes?
these are on that street, but the line continues into the residential areas. You'll see them wrapped around in one of the other photos near that baseball park. Well, they'll continue wrapping around towards the baseball park. They'll continue down the street because we're talking about hundreds and hundreds of workers showing up for work. And
So
if there's
the-
multiple shifts.
So the cumulative impact of this particular case in front of us further compounds what's already there now.
Yes, and this is why we're saying if they had done a proper environmental impact report, all these things would have come out. But that did not happen. They did a negative declaration, meaning that there was no significant impact. But when you look at the cumulative impact aspect of it, yes, it is significant.
Thank you, Mr. Marquez. Anything else? I know you're on a roll, but we have another speaker.
And just like on the variance, it is to permit overnight parking of tractors and trailers.
Okay.
So yes, they will be parking there overnight, but when they don't fill up there, they will park on the street.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Martinez.
Thank you.
Skip Baldwin?
Good afternoon, and I hope I have a few more minutes than I got before the City Council.
Well, I'm going to give you what you need
I'm a
to make
slow
your
talker.
statement.
As you know, this proposal has been voted down 2 times by the Wilmington Neighborhood Council and 1 time by the City Council. These shipping containers are referred to as port blight. February issue of the LA Times quoted a restaurant owner as saying he would not build a restaurant in Wilmington because of the containers. We don't want the blight of shipping containers in a residential zone. Containers can only be located in heavy industry M3 zone. The mitigated negative declaration does not go into detail about the super overloaded weight of the trucks that would be using this proposed location. This street is posted by LADOT as being restricted to trucks not over 6,000 pounds in weight. I checked with DOT and the posted 6,000 pound limit is still in effect. I estimate that the super overloaded trucks would weigh about 100,000 pounds or more. We're talking like that. I believe that's about 16 times what the sign says. The MND doesn't go into the noise factor. You just don't open the doors of these containers. The latches must be beaten open with a hammer. This creates a very loud noise that can be heard for a very long way. The many negative factors provided by container yards are not compatible with residential zoning. That factor plus the other grants giveaway and various adjustments make this a ludicrous proposal. A 5-year variance is no good. As you all know, once it gets in there, it can be renewed and you don't have much choice. M2 may have been, this may have been zoned M2 in previous years, some time ago, but the containers still could not be in there. It's an M3 use only. Eubank may narrow it down some, but big trucks still illegally go up and down Eubank. It's a shortcut between PCH and Anaheim Street. Mentioned here about an oil zone. You're probably already familiar with this. This is always an oil zone, but they got a special permit now that they're going to drill 500 and some odd wells. And this is a green project. They're slant drilling out to existing oil wells near homes and so forth, and doing away with the pumping units there. And those lots have been promised to be given away as parks. And one large one's already been vacated. Here's something else that's coming into play now that we didn't realize before. We've always talked about the emissions that the trucks make. Well, now it's a sand issue too. You're familiar with it already? I won't go into it then. Also about, you're seeing in the photographs where this is so congested with the cars and trucks and so forth, the traffic stops, period. The guys get out of their car and go in. Yeah, okay. There is no such thing as traffic enforcement. They simply, when they're notified, they just don't go there because they're just overwhelmed with the amount of traffic that is there, and these are the rough, tough guys that are longshoremen. So thank you for the time you've given me, and I'll appreciate your support.
Thank you, sir. You got well over the 3-minute marks for the council members, so you did great. All right. We have with us the applicant, Casey Mungo. Casey, come on up. And then followed by Kevin Kemper. Good afternoon, sir.
Thank you, Councilmember Reyes, members of the Plum Committee. I'm actually Kevin Kemper, and as between the two of us, I'd like to go first.
Okay.
And my name is Kevin Kemper. I'm an attorney representing the applicant, Johansson Partnership. Address is 300 South Grand in Los Angeles. First of all, I'd like to say that I respect what the appellants are here to do, what Jesse and Skip are doing. I fully understand the problems, well, not fully, because I don't live in Wilmington, but I understand the problems that they face and the battles that they fought, won and lost to get to where they are. I understand that. I understand the big picture of planning, but there's also other issues involved. I understand for them this is a line in the sand, that every application for a container storage facility in Wilmington is going to be looked at in and of itself as a retreat from the hard-fought victories they've received in the planning process and ordinances. And so I understand all of that. But at the same time, there's other issues involved as well. This particular piece of property is surrounded by heavy industrial uses. And so, as the zoning administrator has written in her findings, the incremental addition of a very small open container storage on this site is not going to have a significant impact on the residences in the neighborhood. It just simply won't. That's not to say that none of these facilities ever could, but this one is small. This is 1.4 acres. The prospective tenant has 8 trucks, and he's looking at running about 100 truck trips out of this site per week. That's all he's got. The zoning administrator was mistaken that the prospective tenant controls the existing truck depot to the north. He doesn't. So this is not going to be an expansion of a use that's already there, operated by the same person. This is going to be his only operation there. This has been subject to secret review by the city. Staff has concluded that this project, with the trucks involved and its location, will not have a significant impact on the environment. I think that has to do with the size of the operation as well as its context. As the zoning administrator indicated, to the north of this property is an existing truck depot. That's the operation that separates the subject property from the residences to the north up on Eubank. To the south is an oil well and an existing truck operation. Both of those truck operations operate as grandfathered uses. They are not subject to permit conditions, as would be the case with this one. To the east is a train yard, and then the BNSF train line serving Watson Yard. That's not going anywhere anytime soon. And on the west side, directly across Eubank from the subject property, is the Warren E&P oil facility. That's not going anywhere soon. These uses are there. I mean, we can say that the truck uses might phase out over time, but Warren E&P is not going to phase out. In 2006, and then again in 2008, the city approved an expansion of the Warren E&P facility to consolidate oil drilling in Wilmington at that site. Formerly, Warren controlled oil wells throughout Wilmington, and the idea with that consolidation was for them to perform slant drilling from the central location on Eubank and eliminate the wells that are dispersed through Wilmington. At the Planning Commission hearing, a representative from Council District 15 said that, on the whole, that was a good project for Wilmington because it got rid of those dispersed wells, but the impact of that was that it increased the scope of the Warren E&P operation on Eubank. Is that a good trade-off for Wilmington? Yes, I would agree that it is. Does it have an increased effect on properties on Eubank? Yes, it does, and it renders them less suitable for residential use. This property is not likely to convert to residential. It really isn't. I mean, in 2010, the environmental justice group Communities for a Better Environment produced an environmental justice study on the Warren E&P facility and its effects on neighboring uses. I did include that as part of my submittal. But if we're to believe that residential use of this property consistent with its zoning designation is going to happen, those residences will be a lot closer to E&P than any existing residence And Communities for Better Environment will likely want to update their justice study to focus on the particular effects of this. It isn't going to happen. And so even though the city, in the big picture, zoned a lot of this property as R3 to facilitate an ultimate transition to residential, while that may happen in other parts of Wilmington, north of Anaheim, it's not going to happen on the 900 block of Eubank Avenue. And so, for that reason, the zoning administrator's approval should be sustained. When this was before the Planning Commission, even though there were some differences of opinion on the outcome of it, none of the planning commissioners seemed willing to make a finding that the zoning administrator was in error, that she'd abused her discretion or made an erroneous determination. And so I urge you to recommend upholding this. Finally, I just want to, I know you want to cut me off, but
No, I want to make sure you were making a statement, and I give you that. So
I appreciate
if you want to
that.
conclude.
I'm grateful. There's the issue of disparate treatment. I recognize the land use conflicts that exist in Wilmington, but 6 blocks away from this site at 1540 Eubank, there's a much larger container facility, 10 acres in size. It is directly across the street from an R1 neighborhood. In 2010, it is also a non-conforming use under zoning. In 2010, the city approved a series of zone variances to allow this facility to continue in operation. This facility doesn't have any of the conditions, save for one, really, that are imposed on this application. The subject property is prohibited from stacking containers. It's prohibited from operating with, it's going to be required to pave the site. No idling. All of these things. The only condition that it shares in common with the 1540 Eubank is a hotline that neighbors can call if there's a problem. And
Thank you, sir.
I urge the commission to recommend that the decision of the zoning administrator be upheld.
Thank you, Mr. Kemper.
Thank you.
Thank you. Casey Mungo, are you here?
My name's Casey Mungo. My address is 1025 West 190th Street. By profession, I'm a commercial real estate agent, and I'm not going to touch on some of the things that Sue and Mr. Kemper already touched on because you've already heard it, but I'm going to try to bring some new information in front of you guys. The first thing I'll talk about is the demand for residential. I'd say at this point, during this time, and not to say it's going to change in the next 5 years, but there is zero demand for residential at this parcel. With the BNSF main line facility directly behind the site that is not paved, nor has that restriction, and the Warren EMP facility directly across the street, there would be zero chance of converting this to residential, even if you potentially let that happen.
Ask you to pause for a
Excuse me.
second.
Thank you. I'm Terry Kaufman, Macias City Attorney's Office. Under the municipal code at 1227K, on appeal, the record is the evidence that was introduced before the zoning administrator. If the applicant or an aggrieved person wishes to present new evidence, there are findings and a procedure that has to be made for that. So if the applicant is talking about new information, then I think that would fall under this section if that evidence was not presented to the ZA. So I don't know if I misunderstood, but that's how
But I
it's
believe
phrased.
he is the applicant, correct?
I represent the applicant.
Right. And you're saying the applicant would...
Well, let me read the section. First of all, on appeal, the decision is to be based only upon evidence introduced at the hearing or hearings, if any, before the zoning administrator on the issue, the record, findings, and decision of the zoning administrator, and consideration of arguments presented orally or in writing. If an applicant or aggrieved person wishes to present any new evidence in connection with the matter, he or she shall file with this says Area Planning Commission, but we're now in front of the council, a written summary of that evidence together with a statement as to why that evidence could not reasonably have been presented to the zoning administrator. If the decision maker determines that the evidence could not reasonably have been presented to the zoning administrator and the evidence is of such a nature as might reasonably have led to a different decision by the zoning administrator, the decision maker shall remand the matter back to the ZA.
I see.
And then the ZA opens the matter to hear that evidence. So I don't know if you're giving new evidence about sales of homes and things like that, and that wasn't presented, then it may fall under that.
I think my intent was just to confirm that everything, that was previously said, I'm not going to retouch on that. I was just making new statements. If you consider that evidence, I'm not sure.
Well, I would rather err on the side of caution.
Okay.
And perhaps give you the choice if you want to submit new evidence. Then we would have to go back to the previous body, put that on the record so we can analyze it based on new information given to the zoning administrator. Or we can just stop now with new evidence, any new statements, and concur with the previous speaker.
It's my understanding that the comments that the applicant's rep may have been mentioning were still within the scope of what was before the zoning administrator. It was just different comments than the prior commenters had.
Okay, so he's bringing up what's already on the record, but hasn't been mentioned yet.
That's my understanding. I don't mean to speak for the applicant's rep, but
it's your call.
Okay.
That's fine. The way it was phrased, it sounded like it might fall within new evidence. So if it's not,
if you're sharing with us information that you know was already stated in the case before, and we haven't heard it yet, we can hear that.
Okay.
But if it's new information that was not considered in the case, then I would suggest you reconsider that.
Yeah, I believe this information was considered in the past, and I won't touch on that subject anymore, if that's okay?
Okay, it's up to you.
And then, I guess my two comments left that I have is, in my experience with the restrictions and the constraints that were placed on the applicant, to my knowledge, this is going to be the cleanest truck facility in the area. None of the other truck facilities that have anywhere close to this amount of constraints, and I feel that the recommendations given by the planning administrator were just, and I think it'll make a nice facility for the neighbors and the surrounding area.
Okay.
And that's all I have.
Well, thank you, sir. Thank you for your time and your presentation. We do have one more speaker, which is the representative of the council office. Before she comes up, I wanted to just respond to some of the comments in a very general way, in that my respect for the decision makers of the different districts is based on knowing that they know their district. In this case, Councilman Buscaino, a former police officer who's been in the homes of many people throughout his district, understands the impacts that have been felt by communities who otherwise would not have a voice. And that has been his posture in many issues up to date. So I respect that. Secondly, I represent a district with very old neighborhoods that evolved around rail yards. And the cumulative impact there has been devastating to many neighborhoods in my district. And to me, how we continue to allow for the accumulation of these impacts is a real challenge, because you're balancing jobs, balancing commerce, trade, with the quality of life of children and families. And somewhere along the line, someone has to make a decision. So that's the balancing act that I think we're trying to achieve here. And therein lies some of the accountability that exists with the elected official. So I'll stop here. I'd like to hear from the council office I'd like to come on up. Ms. Allison. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Thank you so much for that segue, because I think that is exactly the conundrum that we face. For the record, my name is Allison Becker. I'm the Planning and Economic Development Director for Council District 15. Zone variances like this case really kind of put a very bright spotlight on areas, communities maybe that haven't benefited from community plan updates. And clearly in our 1 year's experience with the community of Wilmington, it's really clear that the city needs to be paying closer attention to this area. And so the councilman will be advocating very strongly through the upcoming budget process to make sure that Wilmington is on the list for a community plan update. The council office consistently supports the community's efforts to improve the quality of life in Wilmington. We stand on the shoulders of the great work that former Councilwoman Janice Hahn did through her interim control ordinance and the last community plan update that was done by the prior administration. Clearly there continues to be a lot of need for finer grain attention on the impacts that industrial uses have on residential zones. The magic here is the extent to which the zoning administrator has accomplished this task. The city, through its process, has created a very narrow window of opportunity for the property owner, and the property owner's representative, who was recently brought on, made a specific request to the council office today at 1 o'clock. To see if they might have one opportunity to sit down and meet with the advocates to review the case, what they understand to be the envelope of approval, and in the interest of process, I would ask for you to consider a 1-week continuance of this item so that we can at least facilitate that meeting.
I believe we can. It's going to be one of those demanding days. We're going to have a rather big ticket item in the LAWA issue.
I understand.
At 2 o'clock. So if my colleague agrees that we were to meet at, let's say, 1:30, one is we can close public comment.
Yeah, that's what I was going to suggest.
We'll close public comment, and we can use that time just to drill down to the action of the committee.
Great.
Since we already have public hearing, it shortens the time, and it allows us, if Councilmember, your agenda or schedule allows, and assuming that council finishes on time, then we can have date certain on the 9th, with the understanding that if your schedule permits and he's checking, we can shoot for 1:30. We can comment. Then the other committee would just have to wait when we deliberate. It's a joint committee.
Yeah, no, right. So we can take the item. My guess would it might even be on consent, but at the end of the day, it doesn't. We won't have public comment if we already satisfied public comment.
Right.
Today.
We would just need that time to make sure we are hearing the final statements on how they're going to address the findings. It's the findings that have to be on record. That could take about 15 minutes.
Yeah, 15 minutes. So we could certainly do it.
Do you want to shoot for 2 or 1:30?
2 would be great. We could do 2.
Okay, so I don't have Councilman Weezar here. We do have. By when do we have to have the final notice to make sure everyone knows that we follow the Brown Act law?
What we could do is a special, so we'd know more information that would require then, if it was 2 o'clock, it wasn't the regular posted time, it would be a special for Plum at 2, and that's a 24-hour notice as opposed to on a special. I thought that's at 2:30.
2 o'clock.
Oh, I see, that's at 2. So we could do a 1:45 special.
Right, that's what I'm suggesting.
24 hours in advance. Okay.
Okay, so 1:45?
45.
Okay. So we'll shoot for 1:45 on the 9th as a special meeting. Make sure everyone is notified. And that way we don't violate any of the Brown Act laws.
Thank you. I really appreciate the
Can
accommodation.
you make a statement, please?
Well, Terry Kaufman, Macias, if you continue to a date certain, you don't have to renotice.
Okay.
So there won't be a renotice if you're saying today it's going to be April 9th at 1:45. The only thing you need to do is you've got your agenda requirements, so I guess you're going to be doing a special agenda.
Yes,
just to make sure, the agenda will reflect, but right now, for the record, this item is continued to a 1:45 p.m. meeting on Tuesday, April 9th, and that is for Plum, and the council date for this issue will be changed. It was previously April 9th. It will now be April 10th.
Okay.
Are you in this room?
The 1:45 special meeting will be in the Board of Public Works room here. There will be a 2 p.m. joint meeting with Plum and Trade, Commerce, and Tourism committees, and that will be in council chambers, and that is regarding the
Why can't we do this?
LAX specific plan. If you would like, you could be in the council chambers at 1:45.
Let's just do that.
Okay, 1:45, excuse me, the special Plum meeting on this item, Tuesday the 9th, and in council, April 10th.
Okay. All right. So public comment is closed. We'll expect some feedback from the council office and the respective parties, and we'll take it from there. Okay. Seeing no one else on public comment. Do you have anything here for general public comment? Seeing none, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much.